This episode is brought to you by Kia's first three-row, all-electric SUV, the Kia EV9, with available all-wheel drive and seating for up to 7 adults, with 0 to 60 speed that thrills you 1 minute and available lounge seats that unwind you the next. Visit kia.com/EV9 to learn more. Ask your Kia dealer for availability. No system, no matter how advanced, can compensate for all driver error and or driving conditions. Always drive safely.
A science story, huh?
These NYU scientists, they
felt
right.
I was so
And I just thought, well,
I had figured it out.
it was that golden moment.
Because science was on my side.
Hey everyone, I'm Ben Lilly, and welcome to the Story Collider, where we bring you true stories of how science has affected people's lives. A quick reminder, we have events coming up in Boston on December 4th and New York on December 17th. See storycollider.org for more. This week's storyteller is Arran Frood. The story was recorded in November 2012 at the Camden Head in London as part of the Spot On Science Conference. The theme of the event was connections.
So, like many people in this room, I did a science degree. And pretty soon I worked out that I didn't really want to be a scientist, or rather that I would just be a hopeless scientist. I remember the exact day I studied biology and then entomology. I was supposed to be counting insects, little small insects called aphids, on branches, and it was really hot, the sweat was dripping into my eyes. And I was just kind of looking at the branches and going, 36. A bigger branch, and then I'd be like, 124. So instead of becoming a scientist, I worked my way into science writing and science journalism. And my kind of breakthrough story was writing a story about the effects of cannabis on driving, in which I enrolled in the actual study. I found myself driving a multi-million-pound driving simulator whilst very, very stoned. That was fun, and I got paid to do it as well. That gave me the idea that maybe writing about crazy drugs would be more productive and healthier than just taking them. So, fortunately, around this time, there was a clutch of new studies coming up. There was like a renaissance in research using psychedelic drugs like MDMA, which is ecstasy, LSD, and psilocybin, which is the active ingredient in magic mushrooms. So there were studies, looking at post-traumatic stress disorder and psychotherapy. Will MDMA help? LSD and certain types of headaches. It sounds crazy, but LSD has a similar structure to some migraine drugs. So I carved out myself a little niche, writing about these like psychedelic studies. They're all these small-scale things, and I'm trying to do it in a balanced and objective and non-sensationalist way, which kind of works. I got various stories published in Nature, New Scientist, a few of the papers and stuff. Somewhere in the system, some of these scientists, some of these researchers must have realized that I was doing a string of these articles, because suddenly I got sent a letter, like a real letter, on paper and everything, to the place where I worked at the time, which was the Science Photo Library. And it was from one of these researchers who was doing, some of these studies. So we entered into a correspondence, just by mail at his insistence. And after about 3 weeks, I was absolutely shocked, excited, and everything to find that he was inviting me to go to another country to take part in a group psychotherapy session involving psychedelic drugs. Yeah, exactly. So I weighed things up. Being younger then, adventurous, wanting to get into like undercover, investigative journalism, I weighed everything up and I thought, whoa, free drugs, yeah! Cool, sign me up. So I jumped on a plane and I found myself in another country in Europe signing up to this kind of semi-scientific study. There were questionnaires, there was data, there was that kind of thing. And, between the two of us, we kind of cooked up a little story. I was going to be undercover. There were lots of other people around, like proper patients that had been referred to this like secret group. And so I was going to be a friend of the contact, a guy who was like interested in transpersonal psychology, whatever that is. And nobody seemed to take too much notice of the fact that there was a lone English guy around. Everyone spoke a little bit of English. That was absolutely fine. So when I get there on the Friday night, it's not all about drugs. There's all these kind of group sort of exercises to get everyone together. The most memorable of which kind of goes like this, and feel free to laugh because I know I wanted to. It was it was like a dance designed to let off your negative emotions. Okay. That's what we did. If you think that looks really, really stupid, imagine what it's like in a room with 15 people doing it. Yeah, 3 of which are psychotherapists, 12 of which are treatment-resistant people who go who go to see psychotherapists. Thankfully, things got more serious after that, and we had to sit down in pairs, and we had to actually talk to the other person with no interruptions, without stopping for 5 minutes, about your deepest, darkest fears, about your personal problems, about the things that you intend to confront during this journey. It's really, really, really hard. Give it a go one day. Sit down with a great friend, a partner, a lover, and when the time is right, just talk. For 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. Give it a go. It's hard. If that wasn't hard enough, after that we had to do this to the group. So I had to then explain to the group of complete strangers who I'd only met that evening what my theme was, my journey for the drug session that was going to take place the next day. And the theme of my journey was going to be my relationship with my father. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to go into excruciating details about my relationship with my father. In fact, it was quite good. It's not a horrible sob story, We did fishing together, father-son stuff, We went to football matches. Yes, he hugged me. Yes, he told me he loves me. It's all okay. But, on the other hand, he was an alcoholic. And this really blighted his life. He was like a high-flying policeman. He was in the original Sweeney Todd. If you've ever seen the original series or the film that came out, he was in the original CID. So basically, he was an overweight detective with a handlebar moustache who used to keep a bottle of scotch in the top drawer. That's the kind of guy he was. So that was my theme for my journey. So the next day, we wake up at dawn, 8 o'clock, that's dawn for me, and we do a resuscitative breathing exercise, which puts you in a really, really relaxed state. And then, at like 10 a.m., we divide into 2 groups. So there are about 15 of us patients, and half the group are going to take LSD, half of the group are going to take MDMA. I was in the MDMA group. So we take the stuff at 10 a.m. on an empty stomach because only fruit tea is allowed, no caffeine, no food. And what you do then is, we're in a room, that's probably about as big as this bit here. Apologies to the people sitting over there. You'll see what it's like later. And then everyone lies down in sleeping bags, like on a yoga mat. And what you do is you just lie down on a yoga mat in your sleeping bag, and there's these headphone points in the wall. You put the headphones on and you start listening to this music, which immediately presented me with a problem because I was on great quality drugs. This is like a semi-scientific stuff. The stuff was really good, but I was listening to really, really bad music. These people were Europeans, so it was all like hippy dippy, like trance stuff, like ambient world music from a world I've never been to. It was really, really, really bad. Honestly, they probably planned it that way because it was more fun to think about my alcoholic father. So that's what I did. I started thinking about him. And the format for the therapy is that what you do is you're lying down there, and whenever you think, you go through stuff in your head, and you put your hand up, and then you call one of the psychotherapists over. There's 3 of them. And then you have a little one-to-one with them. So even though it's in a group setting, the actual therapy is one-to-one. And so, I started speaking to my contact, and, it's just incredibly hard, though, because, back then, when I used to take MDMA, ecstasy, it used to make me feel like I don't know, pretty ecstatic. And there I am trying to think about my dad and stuff. It's like my jaw is going like this, and my eyes are rolling around like mad marbles in my head. But eventually I did get it together. I talked to my contact, and yeah, I had like a mini epiphany. And that was that my father, he'd done bad things. People had left him one by one, his close family, his extended family, friends and stuff. But I was still there for him. I was one of the only people he still had. And by this time, he'd retired from the police force. He'd moved to Spain. He'd dried up. He was sober. He made a partial success of that. But I was like one of his umbilical cords, back to the UK, back to, his former life. And so that was my little epiphany. And the next day, we all did more exercises together, talking stuff, working everything over. And we went back to our lives. So at this point, got back to the UK, and my life was quite exciting in that all this really, really quite exciting stuff was happening. I moved into a new house. I met a girl, just like exciting new relationship. I had a new job starting up. So everything was looking really great. And then my dad died. Yeah, bummer. So at this point, the journey that I did was this like amazing story that one day we agreed I'd be able to write about it. But of course, as soon as he died, it took on this whole new meaning. And those of you who have lost a parent will know that, your head goes through all this like crazy stuff like, oh, did I do enough? What had I done? When was the last time I told them I love them? All these kinds of things. And what I worked out, the fact that I'd worked out then that I'd actually probably been a good son to him and I was still there for him, that was of some comfort. That really helped me out. Just during that initial phase, just in those first 2 months, 3 months. After that, it didn't really sort of work. And, ironically, the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, Bill Wilson, he actually took an acid trip, and he thought that would be really good for people with alcohol problems. So it's a shame, really, that my dad didn't, give it a go. But never got a chance. But, in no way is this talk trying to condone or support the use of these illegal drugs in therapy because, it's not proven. And, there are now small-scale studies going underway to try and see if it does work. And that's the right thing to do. It's for the scientific and the medical community to find out if it works. But all I can say is, for me, it worked a bit for a bit. Thank you.
That was Arran Frood. Arran has been a freelance science writer and editor for 12 years. He has written for New Scientist, Nature, BBC Online, and many others. For more science stories, take a look at storycollider.org, where we have our magazine, archives of the podcast, and upcoming events. The Story Collider is produced by me, Brian Wecht, and Aaron Barker. The podcast is produced by Rose Eveleth. Additional help from Brooke Williams, Lena Groger, Josh McCall, and Rafaela Benin. The theme music is by Ghost. Special thanks to the Camden Head for hosting the show, to Lou Woodley and Spot on London for inviting us, to Laura Wheeler for extraordinary work handling the logistics, and to Jetlag for not being all that bad, really, when it comes right down to it. Thanks for listening.
Asante came to TurboTax after graduating from culinary school and landing a job in the hottest kitchen in town.
My hands are full all day, every day. I love it.
Asante, as your TurboTax expert, I'll make your moves count, guaranteeing 100% accurate filing and your maximum refund. Sound good?
Yes, expert!
Switch to Intuit TurboTax and make your moves count. See guarantee details at turbotax.com/guarantees. Experts only available with TurboTax Live.